Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. In today's session we would start volume 3 of the novel Emma. We would look at the text, story and we would do a critical analysis. Before I move forward, I would like to share a quick review of the previous session. In the previous session we continued volume 2 of the novel Emma. In other words, we covered from chapter 29 to chapter 36 and thus we finished volume 2. For doing that, we followed the same scheme of analysis, that is, we looked at important happenings and events taking place in different chapters. We saw the development of characters, we looked at the themes, how they were presented in these chapters, and we looked at the art of characterization and the art of writing by Jane Austen. As far as today's session is concerned, well, today we would start volume 3 of the novel. We will start actually from chapter 37 in total or overall, and we will cover till chapter 45. We will look at the following: important happenings in these chapters, points of discussion that would be critically explored, important parts of text with reference to the development of characters, and Jane Austen as a writer, her art of characterization, etc. would also be explored. Development of different themes through these chapters would be looked at, and we would see the writing style of Jane Austen, how it develops through the novel. To start chapter 37, I have selected the opening text of chapter 37, volume 3. This chapter is the first chapter actually of volume 3. Let's see what happens. A very little quiet reflection was enough to satisfy Emma as to the nature of her agitation on hearing this news of Frank Churchill. She was soon convinced that it was not for herself she was feeling at all apprehensive or embarrassed. It was for him. Her own attachment had really subsided into a mere nothing. It was not worth thinking of. But if he, who had undoubtedly been always so much the most in love of the two, were to be returning with the same warmth of sentiment which he had taken away, it would be very distressing. Again, what we notice is, number one, that Emma is worried about the return of Frank Churchill, and number two, she is worried for a reason that maybe is actually how she thinks of it, or maybe different from how she thinks of it. What she thinks is that she is not worried or tensed about his visit because of herself, because her own feelings have subsided with the passage of time, they are over. She is worried and she is concerned about Frank Churchill, that he seemed to be too much in love with her. So when he would come back with the same warmth of feelings, how would he feel if she would not be responding to all that? However, the question at this time point arises whether it is self-deception of Emma or actually this is so. If a separation of 2 months should not have cooled him, there were dangers and evils before her. Caution for him and for herself would be necessary. She did not mean to have her own affections entangled again, and it would be incumbent on her to avoid any encouragement of his. She wished she might be able to keep him from an absolute declaration. That would be so very painful a conclusion of their present acquaintance, and yet she could not help rather anticipating something decisive. She felt as if the spring would not pass without bringing a crisis, an event, a something to alter her present composed and tranquil state. So she is apprehensive, she is afraid of what would happen when he comes, and she does not respond to him and his love as he wants it to be. She feels as if the spring would not pass without bringing a crisis. This shows again her imagination is at work, and she is anticipating certain negative happenings. It was not very long, though rather longer than Mr. Weston had foreseen, before she had the power of forming some opinion of Frank Churchill's feelings. The Anscombe family were not in the town quite so soon as had been imagined, but he was at Highbury very soon afterwards. The text continues on this slide as well. He wrote down for a couple of hours. He couldn't yet do more, but as he came from Randalls immediately to Harfield, she could then exercise all her quick observation and speedily determine how he was influenced and how she must act. They met with the utmost friendliness. There could be no doubt of his great pleasure in seeing her, but she had an almost instant doubt of his caring for her as he had done, of his feeling the same tenderness in the same degree. She watched him well. It was a clear thing he was less in love than he had been. Absence, with the conviction probably of her indifference, had produced this very natural and very desirable effect. He was in high spirits, as ready to talk and laugh as ever, and seemed delighted to speak of his former visit and recur to old stories, and he was not without agitation. It was not in his calmness that she read his comparative difference. He was not calm. His spirits were evidently fluttered. There was restlessness about him. Lively as he was, it seemed a liveliness that did not satisfy himself, but what decided her belief on the make other calls in Highbury. He had seen a group of old acquaintance in the street as he passed. He had not stopped. He would not stop for more than a word, but he had the vanity to think they would be disappointed if he didn't call, and much as he wished to stay longer at Harfield, he must hurry off. He had no doubt as to his being less in love, but neither his agitated spirits nor his hurrying away seemed like a perfect cure. अब एमा को फिर से फिक्रें होना शुरू हो जाती हैं. When she meets Frank Churchill, what she notices is that he doesn't seem to be that much in love with her as she assumed. She satisfies herself by saying that, well, this is a natural result when he was away, and especially when she had not already expressed her love to him as well, so it is a possibility. She, however, is not satisfied. Why she is not satisfied? Because the hurrying away of Frank Churchill, and because of his agitated spirits, she thinks that he is not in a perfect cure. And she was rather inclined to think it implied a dread of her returning power and a discreet resolution of not trusting himself with her long. With this we come to chapter 37, and let's see what happens in this chapter. We have read the relevant text and have noticed that Emma thinks about her agitation upon hearing of Frank's impending arrival. Emma's attachment to Frank Churchill has subsided, but she is now concerned that he is in love with her. She feels such apprehension more on his behalf than her own. By this time she is sure that her attachment to him is not very strong. अब उसे लगता है कि she is not very much attached to him, but still she is worried about him to be attached to her. When she sees him again, he is friendly and spirited, but his visit is for a very short time, that is only for 15 minutes. The short span of this visit convinces Emma that his feelings towards her have also changed or weakened. When Frank returns, he and his aunt and uncle decide to stay at a house 9 miles away from Mr. Weston. Thus, Frank is kept away for 10 days after this first visit. Mrs. Churchill finally decides that her family must move from London to Richmond, which places Frank closer to Highbury. Mr. Weston is delighted to have his son near, and a date is set for the long postponed ball. So he begins preparations for a ball at the Crown Inn. With reference to chapter 37, theme of vanity and self-deception emerges as a very important theme. Emma's concern for Frank Churchill that he must be in love with her indicates one more thing, that is her self-centeredness, her vanity, and her self-deception on the part of Emma, believing that she is so important, that she is so good, that he, that is Frank Churchill, must be in love with her. This takes us to the next chapter, that is chapter 38. The ball, the party that had been postponed now is being held, and finally the day of the ball arrives. Emma is invited by Mr. Weston to come early and give her opinion on the arrangements. Emma is happy with this invitation to come early. She wants to take this opportunity to have some privacy to her second meeting with Frank, who will be with his father. But Emma is not the only one whom Mr. Weston has asked to come early, so Frank is found very busy. Well, he seems excited but restless, constantly moving to see who has arrived. Finally, when Jane and Miss Bates arrive, Frank rushes out to help them with umbrellas. But while all this is happening, we notice that Frank Churchill behaves oddly towards Emma during the whole ball. He does not pay much attention to her. However, other people like him, such as Mrs. Elton, pronounces Frank a very fine young man. Miss Bates also expresses her happiness, gratitude and pleasure. Frank tells Emma that he dislikes Mrs. Elton and her familiar manner with Jane, and he runs off again to ask his father when the dancing will begin. Mr. and Mrs. Weston, as hosts, suddenly realize that Mrs. Elton expects to be asked to lead the dance. This implies that they cannot give Emma that honor as they had already thought of. So during the first dance, Emma and Frank dance second to Mr. Weston and Mrs. Elton, and Mrs. Elton is very much gratified with this. She is very much happy. Despite this slight disappointment, Emma enjoys the beginning of the festivities. However, interestingly, she is disturbed that Mr. Knightley will not dance. She admires his attractive personality and how he is prominent amongst others. Mr. Knightley also is aware that he is watching her. So we start noticing as readers that there is some attraction between Mr. Knightley and Miss Emma. The ball is a success overall. However, one incident bothers Emma. During one dance, Harriet is left without a partner, and Mr. Elton is the only dancer who is disengaged at that moment. Mrs. Weston encourages Mr. Elton to dance with Harriet. He blatantly refuses, much to Harriet's humiliation. Now this is Mr. Knightley who comes to rescue, and he smoothens the situation by asking Harriet to dance with him. Emma is very much pleased with him. Later she expresses her gratitude, and he asks her why the Eltons are her enemies. She admits that she wanted Mr. Elton to marry Harriet and acknowledges that Mr. Knightley was right about his character. After the party, Mr. Knightley tells Emma that the Eltons' intention was to wound both Emma and Harriet. They cannot forgive her for wanting Harriet to marry Elton. This is what Mr. Knightley says. Mr. Knightley also agrees that Harriet has more admirable qualities than he previously thought. So what we see is that a kind of understanding is developing between Emma and Mr. Knightley. Emma and Knightley now dance together, which shows their increasing understanding. Important discussion points related to chapter 38 are based on number 1, Emma's developing clarity on her emotions, and number 2, the theme of propriety. We would discuss these one by one. As far as Emma's developing clarity on her emotions is concerned, Emma enjoys Frank Churchill's company and his attention during the Crown Inn ball, but this is the extent of her feelings. She is now sure that she is not in love with him, though she regrets that she cannot feel more towards him. What this means is that she genuinely and generally likes him and his ways, but she is sure that she does not love him. As far as the theme of propriety is concerned, the Eltons' actions in this chapter continue to develop the theme of propriety and the difference between overt behavior and subtle signs. We notice that Mr. Elton snubs Harriet. The true propriety to be shown according to the needs of the social class again becomes significant. As Elton is not the true representative of this class, it is evident through his lack of manners. He does not do anything outwardly rude towards Harriet, but it is clear that he intends to insult her when he refuses to dance with her. The question why Harriet is the victim of the snub rather than Emma is a very important question, and I would say that the simple answer is that she is an easy target as compared to Emma, who is more elite and thus more powerful. They can snub the socially inferior Harriet with few consequences, but a similar snub against Emma could not be tolerated. After all, she belongs to the elite most class. Again, Mr. Knightley exhibits good manners, being genuinely a member of the class he is representative of, as he asks Harriet to dance with him. This whole episode is very interesting, so I would like to share some text with you so that we could have a critical look at the text. The ball proceeded pleasantly. The anxious cares, the incessant attentions of Mrs. Weston were not thrown away. Everybody seemed happy, and the praise of being a delightful ball, which is seldom bestowed till after a ball has ceased to be, was repeatedly given in the very beginning of the existence of this. Of very important, very recordable events, it was not more productive than such meetings usually are. There was one, however, which Emma thought something of. The last two dances before supper were begun, and Harriet had no partner. The only young lady sitting down, and so equal had been hitherto the number of dancers that how there could be anyone disengaged was the wonder. But Emma's wonder lessened soon afterwards on seeing Mr. Elton sauntering about. He would not ask Harriet to dance if it were possible to be avoided. She was sure he would not, and she was expecting him every moment to escape into the कार्ड रूम. अब सिर्फ हैरियट बचती है डांस के उस वाले राउंड में जहाँ पर देयर इज नोबडी टू डांस विद हर. एमा देख रही है और नोटिस कर रही है that Elton comes there, or it is the moment when only Mr. Elton out of all the men is not engaged in dancing with anybody. लेकिन एमा को पता है कि he would never ask Harriet to dance. So what she anticipates is कि अभी वो कोई बहाना बना के she would escape into the card room, वो card room में चला जाएगा. Escape, however, was not his plan. He came to the part of the room where the sitter-bys were collected, spoke to some, and walked about in front of them as if to show his liberty and his resolution of maintaining it. He did not omit being sometimes directly before Miss Smith or speaking to those who were close to her. Emma saw it. अब एल्टन वहीं पर चक्कर लगा रहा है और लोगों से बातें कर रहा है, prominently सामने आ रहा है, and Emma notices all this. She was not yet dancing. She was working her way up from the bottom and had therefore leisure to look around, and by only turning her head a little, she saw it all. When she was halfway up the set, the whole group were exactly behind her, and she would no longer allow her eyes to watch. But Mr. Elton was so near that she heard every syllable of a dialogue which just then took place between him and Mrs. Weston. And she perceived that his wife, who was standing immediately above her, was not only listening also, but even encouraging him by significant glances. The kind-hearted, gentle Mrs. Weston had left her seat to join him and say, "Don't you dance, Mr. Elton?" अब Mrs. Weston ने notice किया ना कि Harriet is alone. There is nobody to dance with her, so she goes to Mr. Elton and says, "Don't you dance, Mr. Elton?" To which his prompt reply was, "Most readily, Mrs. Weston, if you will dance with me." "Me? Oh no, I would get you a better partner than myself. I am no dancer." The text continues on the next slide. "If Mrs. Gilbert wishes to dance," said he, "I shall have great pleasure, I am sure, for though beginning to feel myself rather an old married man, and that my dancing days are over, it would give me very great pleasure at any time to stand up with an old friend like Mrs. Gilbert." Mrs. Gilbert doesn't mean to dance, but there is a young lady disengaged whom I should be very glad to see dancing, Miss Smith. अब मिसेस वेस्टन से कहती है कि नहीं, मिसेस गिलबर्ट तो डांस नहीं करना चाह रही, लेकिन देयर इज़ अ यंग गर्ल जो डांस करना चाह रही है और इस वक्त इज डिसएंगेज, उसके साथ कोई नहीं है करने के लिए. शी रिफर्स टू मिस हैरियट स्मिथ. "Miss Smith, oh, I had not observed. You are extremely obliging, and if I were not an old married man, but my dancing days are over, Mrs. Weston, you will excuse me. Anything else I should be most happy to do at your command, but my dancing days are over." अब फौरन एल्टन बहाना बना देता है कि आई एम एन ओल्ड मैरिड मैन, सो माई डांसिंग डेज आर ओवर, बस मैंने अब क्या डांस करना है. एंड ही सेज कुछ और आप जो भी कहें, बट माई डांसिंग डेज आर ओवर, सो आई वुड नॉट लाइक टू डांस. Mrs. Weston said no more, and Emma could imagine with what surprise and mortification she must be returning to her seat. This was Mr. Elton, the amiable, obliging, gentle Mr. Elton. अब एमा के हैरान होने की बारी है. She is surprised that such friendly, obliging, gentle Mr. Elton as he used to be, as she thought of him, how different he is now. She looked around for a moment. He had joined Mr. Knightley at a little distance and was arranging himself for settled conversation, while smiles of high glee passed between him and his wife. और मिस्टर एल्टन की तरह उसकी बीवी ने भी ये सब कुछ नोटिस किया है what he is doing, and she is also like Mr. Elton involved in all this, क्योंकि उनमें आपस में there is an exchange of smiles. She would not look again. Her heart was in a glow and she feared her face might be as hot. In another moment, a happier sight caught her, Mr. Knightley leading Harriet to the set. अब इस सिचुएशन में इट इज मिस्टर नाइटली हु कम्स टू रेस्क्यू, और वो आगे बढ़ के हैरियट के पास आता है कि आओ डांस विद मी. नेवर हैड शी बीन मोर सरप्राइज्ड, सेल्डम मोर डिलाइटेड देन एट दैट इंस्टेंस. सो ऑफ कोर्स Emma is very happy. One thing that we notice about Emma is her genuineness, her true love for Harriet. She is happy for Harriet. She was all pleasure and gratitude both for Harriet and herself, and longed to be thanking him, and though too distant for speech, her countenance said much as soon as she could catch his eye again. दूर से वो उसको कुछ कह तो नहीं सकती थी, but through her looks she showed her pleasure on what Mr. Knightley did. His dancing proved to be just what she had believed it, extremely good, and Harriet would have seemed almost too lucky if it had not been for the cruel state of things before, and for the very complete enjoyment and very high sense of the distinction which her happy features announced. It was not thrown away on her. She bounded higher than ever, flew farther down the middle, and was in a continual course of smiles. Mr. Elton had retreated into the guard room, looking, Emma trusted, very foolish. She did not think he was quite so hardened as his wife, though growing very like her. She spoke some of her feelings by observing audibly to her partner, Knightley has taken pity on poor little Miss Smith, very good-natured, I declare. और अब फिर मिसेस एल्टन भी वैसी है जैसा एल्टन है, इसलिए वो फिर अपना एक स्नॉबिश बिहेवियर शो कर रही है, जहाँ वो कहती है कि मिस्टर नाइटली इज डांसिंग विद हैरियट स्मिथ बिकॉज ही हैज टेकन पिटी ऑन हर. Chapter 39, Volume 3. Well, Emma looks back on her talk with Mr. Knightley at the ball with pleasure, and she rejoices that the Eltons' rudeness has cured Harriet of her infatuation with Mr. Elton. पार्टी के बाद अब जब एमा वापस आती है, शी इज थिंकिंग ऑफ द पार्टी एंड शी इज वेरी हैप्पी फॉर व्हाट मिस्टर नाइटली डिड, and she is also happy for another reason, that now that Harriet has seen Mr. Elton's true face, finally she would be over with the love that she feels for Elton. Let us read some text that is related to all this. Well, again, this is the opening text of the chapter that I have selected for you. This little explanation with Mr. Knightley gave Emma considerable pleasure. It was one of the agreeable recollections of the ball which she walked about the lawn the next morning to enjoy. She was extremely glad that they had come to so good an understanding respecting the Eltons, and their opinion of both husband and wife were so much alike, and his praise of Harriet, his concession in her favor, was peculiarly gratifying. अब पहली दफ़ा हम नोटिस करते हैं कि एमा मिस्टर नाइटले के बारे में पॉजिटिवली सोच रही है. शी इज़ हैप्पी ऑन व्हाट ही हैज़ डन फॉर हैरियट. शी इज़ ऑल्सो हैप्पी कि वो और मिस्टर नाइटली एक तरह से ही सोचते हैं अबाउट एल्टन्स, एंड द impertinence of the Eltons, which for a few minutes had threatened to ruin the rest of her evening, had been the occasion of some of its highest satisfactions, and she looked forward to another happy result, the cure of Harriet's infatuation. From Harriet's manner of speaking of the circumstance before they quitted the ballroom, she had strong hopes. It seemed as if her eyes were suddenly opened, and she were enabled to see that Elton was not the superior creature she had believed him. The fever was over, and Emma could harbour little fear of the pulse being quickened again by injurious courtesy. She deepened on the evil feelings of the Eltons for supplying all the discipline of pointed neglect that could be farther requisite. Harriet rational, Frank Churchill not too much in love, and Mr. Knightley not wanting to quarrel with her, how very a happy summer must be before her. इस मोमेंट पे तो एमा इज वेरी हैप्पी, बहुत खुश है कि हैरियट इज बिकमिंग रैशनल एंड लॉजिकल, एंड शी, as Emma noticed, has understood what type of a man Mr. Elton is. She is also happy that Frank Churchill is not too much in love with her, so she doesn't need to burden her conscience for that. And more importantly, that Mr. Knightley is no more quarreling with her, so she is very, very happy. There are some more happenings in this chapter, so the further happenings of the chapter are mentioned here. Suddenly Frank appears with Harriet fainting on his arm. As Harriet comes back to consciousness, she tells the story of how she was walking with a friend, Miss Bickerton, when a gypsy child approached to beg from them. Miss Bickerton, frightened, ran away, but Harriet was unable to follow because of a cramp she had gotten at the ball. Just as she started to panic, a group of gypsies surrounded her and demanded money. It was just by chance that Frank came there walking along and frightened the gypsies away and thus rescued Harriet. Emma cannot help but wonder whether this romantic circumstance might make Harriet and Frank interested in each other. The episode alarms Mr. Woodhouse and is occasion for gossip. However, luckily the gypsies left the neighborhood and as such no harm was caused. Quickly looking at these things with a critical eye, a couple of things are to be noticed. One important thing that is to be noticed is Emma says to herself every time that she would not be matchmaking anymore. But she cannot stop herself. She cannot resist this. She is so very much used to it. अब फिर जैसे ही हैरियट को लेके फ्रैंक आता है, हैरियट भी होश हुई है और the whole story is told by Harriet as she recovers from her unconsciousness, that how she was caught up by gypsies and how Frank came to help. अब again Emma's imagination starts working. फिर अब Emma सोचना शुरू कर देती है. She starts making a matchmaking of Harriet and of Frank, and she starts thinking of the possibilities of each of them falling in love with each other. Well, here is some relevant text from the chapter. The text runs as follows. She was not to see Frank Churchill this morning. He had told her that he could not allow himself the pleasure of stopping at Harfield, as he was to be at home by the middle of the day. She did not regret it. Having arranged all these matters, looked them through and put them all to rights, she was just turning to the house with spirits freshened up for the demands of the two little boys as well as of their grandpa, when the great iron sweep gate opened and two persons entered whom she had never less expected to see together, Frank Churchill with Harriet leaning on his arm, actually Harriet. A moment sufficed to convince her that something extraordinary had happened. Harriet looked white and frightened, and he was trying to cheer her. The iron gates and the front door were not 20 yards asunder. They were all three soon in the hall, and Harriet, immediately sinking into a chair, fainted away. The text continues on this slide as well. A young lady who faints must be recovered. Questions must be answered and surprises be explained. Such events are very interesting, but the suspense of them cannot last long. A few minutes made Emma acquainted with the whole. Miss Smith and Miss Bickerton, another parlour boarder at Mrs. Goddard's, who had been also at the ball, had walked out together and taken a road, the Richmond Road, which, though apparently public enough for safety, had led them into alarm. About half a mile beyond Highbury, making a sudden turn and deeply shaded by elms on each side, it became for a considerable stretch very retired, and when the young ladies had advanced some way into it, they had suddenly perceived at a small distance before them, on a broader patch of greensward by the side, a party of gypsies. A child on the watch came towards them to beg, and Miss Bickerton, excessively frightened, gave a great scream, and calling on Harriet to follow her, ran up a steep bank, cleared a slight hedge at the top, and made the best of her way by a short-cut back to Highbury. But poor Harriet couldn't follow. She had suffered very much from cramp after dancing, and her first attempt to mount the bank brought on such a return of it as made her absolutely powerless, and in this state and exceedingly terrified, she had been obliged to remain How the trampers might have behaved had the young ladies been more courageous must be doubtful, but such an invitation for attack could not be resisted, and Harriet was soon assailed by half a dozen children, headed by a stout woman and a great boy, all clamorous and impertinent in look, though not absolutely in word. More and more frightened, she immediately promised them money, and taking out her purse, gave them a shilling and begged them not to want more or to use her ill. She was then able to walk, though but slowly, and was moving away, but her terror and her purse were too tempting, and she was followed, or rather surrounded, by the whole gang, demanding more. In this state Frank Churchill had found her, she trembling and conditioning, they loud and insolent. By a most fortunate chance, his leaving Highbury had been delayed so as to bring him to her assistance at this critical moment. The pleasantness of the morning had induced him to walk forward and leave his horses to meet him by another road, a mile or two beyond Highbury, and happening to have borrowed a pair of scissors the night before of Miss Bates, and to have forgotten to restore them, he had been obliged to stop at her door, and go in for a few minutes. He was therefore later than he had intended, and being on foot was unseen by the whole party till almost close to them. The terror which the woman and boy had been creating in Harriet was then their own portion. He had left them completely frightened, and Harriet, eagerly clinging to him and hardly able to speak, had just strength enough to reach Harfield before her spirits were quite overcome. It was his idea to bring her to Harfield. He had thought of no other place. अब ये सारी एपिसोड जो मैंने आपके लिए टेक्स्ट में से पढ़ी है, यू कुड हैव नोटिस्ड कि एक छोटी सी बात को कितनी लंबी डिटेल्स के साथ, with how creating the possibilities of Frank Churchill coming there, the element of chance is at work. So how this whole detail is given by Jane Austen. As far as discussion of important or critical points with reference to this chapter are concerned, the story that Harriet tells about Frank Churchill there are less rebutable elements outside of the genteel estate of Harfield and Randalls. Yes, it is very important to notice that abhi tak what we have seen is everything is smooth, everything is well organized, all the people are genteel, good people. We see most of the times the upper class people. Sometimes if we come across people from the lower class, they are people like Harriet, who are somehow working, behaving or living in an environment that is again of the elite class. For the first time we are shown a different picture, a picture outside the Highbury society. We may be for the first time introduced to the world that is outside this elite world in which Emma and other elite people live. Overall, discussing chapters 37 to 39 of this volume, there are some important things that I would like to highlight. Number one, the development of the personality of Emma. At many other points before this, I have talked about the character development of Emma, and I think this is again the time to talk about Emma's character. She has more honest opinions now about people and about her own self. Emma's honest reflections about her lack of substantial or substantive feelings for Frank reveal her growing maturity. She does not rely much on assumptions now. पहले तो हर बात imagination की बेस पे थी ना, बस जो दिल चाहा सोच लिया. Her decisions to observe Frank to see how he feels rather than to begin with an assumption about how he feels enables her to understand that Frank is not in love with her. So what we notice about her is that she is more rational, she is more logical, and she's more ready to learn. We also need to notice the art of Jane Austen as a writer. Austen as a narrator makes clear that Emma's vanity is not at issue in this case. We are told that she is relieved, not offended that Frank's feelings are cooled. This shows a positive change in Emma. Even during the dance, we notice as readers that she seems more interested and more concerned about his odd mood than in courting his attention. Emma has become more concerned with observing others and less concerned with being observed by others. Maybe the vanity that she had at the beginning is gradually being reduced. Dear students, with this we come to chapter 40 and let us see what happens in this chapter. Harriet visits Emma several days later to make a confession. She has a parcel with items that remind her of Mr. Elton. अब आपको याद होगा पिछली पार्टी में how Elton refused to dance with her. So उसके बाद आज अब हैरियट की मुलाकात हो रही है एम्मा से and she has brought a parcel along. The parcel has a few things including a small box with a court plaster that was used at the time as a bandage to cover a small cut that Mr. Elton had. He had used he has used that much part of it as he needed but discarded the rest, which Harriet then kept. Harriet now asserts that her infatuation with Mr. Elton has passed and is over. वो सारी निशानियां जो हैरियट ने संभाल के रखी हुई होती हैं एल्टन की, अब वो लेके उस बॉक्स को फाइनली एम्मा के पास आई है टू कन्फेस समथिंग और वो उसको दिखा रही है. This reminds Emma that it was she who created all this possibility. She felt guilty in recalling that she had lied and said that she did not have any court plaster so that Harriet would have the opportunity to be Elton's healer. अब एम्मा को अपनी जगह पे गिल्ट फील हो रहा है. अगेन वी नोटिस द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ द पर्सनालिटी ऑफ एम्मा. शी फील्स गिल्टी ऑन व्हाट शी डिड एज रॉन्ग. उसे याद है कि व्हेन एल्टन हैड द कट, so Emma was asked to give some piece of plaster, but though she had it, she refused. Why? Because actually what she wanted was कि Harriet उसको देगी और thus they would have developed some kind of intimacy. Second token of love that Harriet has stored with her is a useless bit of pencil that Elton had discarded. She throws both these items into the fire and Emma hopes that Frank might take Elton's place. एम्मा की अब अपनी कहानी है, उसकी अपना इमेजिनेशन है. वो सोच रही कि अच्छा अब फ्रैंक और दैट इज फ्रैंक चर्चिल और हैरियट जो है अब उनका शी कैन मेक अ मैच ऑफ दीज. Now Harriet vows never to marry and Emma is intelligent enough to understand that there must be somebody behind all this. So she asks to confirm her suspicion that Harriet doesn't think that she will marry because she is interested in someone of a higher class. After some hesitation, Harriet says yes, for the person she prefers is too great and her superior. Emma gives Harriet some hope that she might be able to marry this man. इस सारी कहानी को समझने के लिए I would like you to see the opening text of the chapter and the interesting confession of Harriet. A very few days had passed after this adventure when Harriet came one morning to Emma with a small parcel in her hand and after sitting down and hesitating thus began. Miss Woodhouse, if you are at leisure, I have something that I should like to tell you, a sort of confession to make, and then, you know, it will be over. Emma was a good deal surprised but begged her to speak. There was a seriousness in Harriet's manner which prepared her quite as much as her words for something more than ordinary. It is my duty and I am sure it is my wish, she continued, to have no reserves with you on this subject, as I am happily quite an altered creature in one respect. It is very fit that you should have the satisfaction of knowing it. I don't want to say more than is necessary. I am too much ashamed of having given way as I have done, and I dare say you understand me. Yes, said Emma. I hope I do. अब हैरियट माफी तलाफी कर रही है कि वो गलत थी जब वो एल्टन के बारे में सोच रही थी. The text continues with Harriet's confession. How I could so long a time be fancying myself, cried Harriet warmly. It seems like madness. I can see nothing at all extraordinary in him now. I don't care whether I meet him or not, except that of the two I had rather not see him, and indeed I would go any distance round to avoid him, but I do not envy his wife in the least. I neither admire her nor envy her as I have done. She is very charming, I dare say, and all that, but I think her very ill-tempered and disagreeable. I shall never forget her look the other night. However, I assure you, Miss Woodhouse, I wish her no evil. No, let them be ever so happy together. It will not give me another moment's pang. And to convince you that I have been speaking truth, I am now going to destroy what I ought to have destroyed long ago, what I ought never to have kept. I know that very well, blushing as she spoke. However, now I will destroy it all, and it is my particular wish to do it in your presence, that you may see how rational I am grown. "Cannot you guess what this parcel holds?" said she, with a conscious look. "Not the least in the world. Did he ever give you anything?" "No, I can't call them gifts, but they are things that I have valued very much." She held the parcel towards her, and Emma read the words "most precious treasures" on the top. Her curiosity was greatly excited. Harriet unfolded the parcel and she looked on with impatience. With an abundance of silver papers was a pretty little Tunbridge ware box which Harriet opened. It was well lined with the softest cotton, but excepting cotton, Emma saw only a small piece of court plaster. "Now," said Harriet, "you must recollect." "No, indeed I don't." "Dear me, I should not have thought it possible you could forget what passed in this very room about court plaster, one of the very last times we ever met in it. It was but a very few days before I had my sore throat, just before Mr. and Mrs. John Knightley came, I think the very evening. Don't you remember his cutting his finger with your new penknife, and your encommending court plaster? But as you had none about you and knew I had, you desired me to supply him, and so I took mine out and cut him a piece. But it was a great deal too large, and he cut it smaller and kept playing some time with what was left before he gave it back to me. And so then, in my nonsense, I could not help making a treasure of it. So I put it by never to be used, and looked at it now and then as a great treat." "My dearest Harriet," cried Emma, putting her hand before her face and jumping up, "you make me more ashamed of myself than I can bear. Remember it? I remember it all now, all except your saving this relic. I knew nothing of that till this moment, but the cutting the finger and my recommending court plaster and saying I had none about me. Oh, my sins, my sins! And I had plenty all the while in my pocket. One of my senseless tricks. I deserve to be under a continual blush all the rest of my life." "Well," sitting down again, "go on, what else?" अब एक्चुअली हुआ क्या है, अब एम्मा शर्मिंदा हो रही है, and she really blames herself for the very fact that it was she who pushed poor Harriet into this relationship by creating such situations where she wanted him, that is Elton, and her, that is Harriet, to come closer. Anyhow, she says, "what else? And had you really some at hand yourself? I'm sure I never suspected it. You did it so naturally. And so you actually put this piece of court plaster by for his sake," said Emma, recovering from her state of shame and feeling divided between wonder and amusement. And secretly she added to herself, "Lord bless me, when should I ever have thought of putting by in cotton a piece of court plaster that Frank Churchill had been pulling about? I never was equal to this." "Here," resumed Harriet, turning to her box again, "here is something still more valuable. I mean that has been more valuable because this is what he did really once did belong to him, which the court plaster never did." कहती है कि अब एक और चीज भी है जो एक्चुअली उससे बिलोंग करती थी. Let's see what that is. The text continues, and what we notice is that Emma was quite eager to see this superior treasure. It was the end of an old pencil, the part without any lead. "This was really his," said Harriet. "Do not you remember one morning?" "No, I dare say you do not. But one morning, I forget exactly the day, but perhaps it was the Tuesday or Wednesday before that evening, he wanted to make a memorandum in his pocket book. It was about spruce beer. Mr. Knightley had been telling him something about brewing spruce beer, and she wanted to put it down, but when he took out his pencil, there was so little lead that he soon cut it all away, and it would not do. So you lent him another, and this was left upon the table as good for nothing. But I kept my eye on it, and as soon as I dared, caught it up and never parted with it again from that moment." "I do remember it," cried Emma. "I perfectly remember it. Talking about spruce beer. Oh, yes, Mr. Knightley and I both saying we liked it, and Mr. Elton seeming resolved to learn to like it too. I perfectly remember it. Stop. Mr. Knightley was dancing just here. Was not he? I have an idea he was standing just here. I don't know, I can't recollect. It is very old, but I cannot recollect. Mr. Elton was sitting here, I remember, much about where I am now. Well, go on. Oh, that's all. I have nothing more to show you or to say except that I am now going to throw them both behind the fire and I wish you to see me do it. So जी दूसरा उसके पास जो मेमोरी है वो एक छोटा सा पेंसिल का टुकड़ा है जो she has just taken from there and she thinks because it belonged to Elton she has treasured it और उसको संभाल के रख रही है. अब typical love story it sounds to be at this time point. और अब वो कहती है कि she wants to throw these things, both of these tokens, in fire. The text continues and Emma says, my poor dear Harriet, and have you actually found happiness in training up these things? Yes, simpleton as I was, but I'm quite ashamed of it now and wish I could forget as easily as I can burn them. It was very wrong of me, you know, to keep any remembrances after he was married. I knew it was, but had not resolution enough to part with them. But Harriet, is it necessary to burn the court plaster? I have not a word to say for the bit of old pencil, but the court plaster might be useful. I shall be happier to burn it, replied Harriet. It has a disagreeable look to me. I must get rid of everything. There it goes and there is an end, thank heaven, of Mr. Elton. And when thought Emma, will there be a beginning of Mr. Churchill? तो Harriet कहती है कि और यहाँ पर मेरी Elton के साथ कहानी comes to an end. But look at Emma who is thinking what? She is thinking of कि अच्छा और अब फिर Frank Churchill के साथ how and when this story would start. So Emma basically cannot give up matchmaking. Well, there are a few important learning points. The most important part is with reference to the character of Harriet. We come to know about Harriet more. We come to know the following things about her: her immaturity, her absurdness, her childish obsession, her foolishness, her lack of judgment and appraisal. We not only notice all this, we also notice that now she for the first time has realized that all the imagination, all the working of her thoughts, all her affiliations with Elton were wrong, and now for the first time she has realized what kind of person Mr. Elton is. Harriet and Emma are deliberately ambiguous about the object of Harriet's affection at this time point. The two only established that the man saved her the night of the crown in ball and is someone of high rank. अब ये जो बात हो रही है ना, ये बात हो रही है of Harriet when she says that she would not marry again, and Emma, being clever, understands that there might be a reason for that, and she asks, is there a man who is more high in position than Harriet, that is why she would not marry him? Harriet says yes, and she as talks to Emma, again none of them is clear. This is a part of the writing style of Jane Austen, that to retain the curiosity of the reader, she creates a situation when Harriet and Emma both are deliberately ambiguous about what they talk, and they only establish that the man saved her the night of the crown in ball and is someone of high rank, so much so that it is unlikely that the match would ever be successfully made. Emma assumes that Harriet is referring to Frank Churchill, who rescued her from the gypsies, but both of these characteristics also apply to another respectable man of Highbury who showed kindness to Harriet Smith. So we as readers also do not clearly know what the situation is going to be in the upcoming chapters. With this we come to chapter 41, and what we see is that Mr. Knightley now suspects that there is some secret understanding between Frank Churchill and Jane Fairfax. Mr. Knightley only grows to dislike Frank Churchill more as he suspects double dealing in Frank's pursuit of Emma. It is quite obvious to him and everybody that Emma was the object of his affections, but Mr. Knightley suspects that he had an interest in Jane Fairfax the whole time. During a walk with Emma, Harriet, Mr. and Mrs. Weston, Frank, Jane and Miss Bates, Mr. Knightley notices a strange exchange taking place between Frank and Mrs. Weston. When Frank Churchill asks Mrs. Weston if anything has come of Mr. Parry's plan to buy a carriage, she has no idea what he is talking about, and he answers that she wrote of it in a letter to him some months ago. She denies it, and Frank decides he must have dreamed it. Miss Bates remembers that there was a talk of the Parrys getting a carriage at her house, with Jane present, but that it was a secret. Mr. Knightley observes Frank trying to catch Jane's eye after this. So a lot of suspicion, a lot of confusion and a lot of chaos is created. Mr. Knightley doubts Frank's attitude and his dealing of Emma. Anyhow, the party reaches Hartfield and Emma persuades everyone to come in for tea. Over tea at Hartfield, Emma, Frank Churchill, Harriet and Jane Fairfax play word games in which they are supposed to guess words. Frank constructs the word blunder using alphabet tiles which he shows to Jane. The next word that Frank makes and shows to Jane for guess is Dixon, which greatly annoys Jane, who promptly quits the game. When the party ends up, Mr. Knightley stays behind to speak to Emma, and basically he wants to warn Emma against Frank because he has a lot of suspicions about Frank's behavior. Mr. Knightley also asks Emma about the Dixon joke, and though apparently she refuses that she doesn't know anything, actually she is very much embarrassed because it was she who shared with Frank Churchill that the girl Jane Fairfax was involved with the married man Dixon. Mr. Knightley anyhow tells Emma about his suspicions about an affair between Frank and Jane, but Emma does not agree to this and she thinks that there is no romance between them. Anyhow, Mr. Knightley is very much irritated by all this that happens. There are three important points that I would like to talk with reference to this chapter. Number one, Frank Churchill's behavior. Number two, Mr. Knightley's opinion and the possibilities. And finally, number three, theme of jealousy. We will talk about these one by one. Starting with Frank Churchill's behavior, I would say Frank Churchill's behavior is still inappropriately deceptive. He has a manipulative nature. He does not direct his manipulation towards Emma. During the game, Frank teases and taunts Jane Fairfax, which is noticed by everybody, and Jane Fairfax is actually teased, so she leaves. The question arises, what is the purpose of teasing her? Maybe to make her lose her temper and reveal her true emotions? This scene parallels the earlier incident in which Mr. Elton uses the riddle to declare his feelings to Emma via Harriet Smith. If you can recall the times when Emma thought that Harriet and Elton they were involved with each other and that Elton was courting Harriet, but actually Elton was courting Emma. In all that chaotic situation, in all that confusion, there was this same kind of game of solving a riddle, which further generated some misunderstandings between Emma and Elton. Mr. Knightley's opinion and the possibilities is the second important critical point of discussion. Mr. Knightley thinks that Frank Churchill and Jane Fairfax are having an affair. We as readers know that Mr. Knightley has been consistently correct in judging others' actions. अभी तक उसने जितनी दफ़ा भी कहा किसी के बारे में, जितनी दफ़ा उसने एमा को बताया, उसकी गलतियाँ निकाली, every time we notice that he, whatsoever he says is right and whatsoever he predicts proves to be true. In this context, his suspicion regarding Frank Churchill and Jane Fairfax gathers significance. His other suspicion is that Frank wants to harm Emma. Times will show how far he is right or wrong in this regard. The next theme is of jealousy with reference to this chapter, and Emma is sure that she doesn't love Frank, but Mr. Knightley still feels threatened by him. This continues to build the possibility that Mr. Knightley himself is interested in Emma. His greatest care in this situation is that Emma doesn't get hurt, which shows his some kind of involvement in Emma. There are some other important discussion points with reference to chapter 41. Although the narrator typically describes all events from Emma's point of view, this chapter is unique in that it is narrated entirely from Mr. Knightley's point of view. The whole chapter presents what he can see of the word games, etc. By shifting to Mr. Knightley's point of view, the writer has given a new perspective to the reader on the mixture of knowledge as well as confusion that each character experiences. This new emphasis on Mr. Knightley's character and point of view also foreshadows subtly that he is becoming a central character. This leads us to chapter 42 of this volume. An outing to Box Hill is planned, but it has to be postponed because of a lame horse. Mr. Knightley half-jokingly suggests that a party can come to his estate instead. Now Mrs. Elton immediately gets ready for it and starts seriously planning it. Well, Mr. Knightley has to be firm to prevent her from planning all the details. Meanwhile, the lame horse heals and it is decided that the Box Hill party will follow the one at Downwell Abbey, that is Mr. Knightley's estate. At Downwell Abbey, Emma enjoys examining Knightley's house and grounds. Her ears catch some conversation between Jane Fairfax and Mrs. Elton. Also, she notices that Jane is resisting a governess situation that Mrs. Elton has found for her. Walking through the garden, Emma also finds Harriet and Mr. Knightley looking out over the Martin family home and thinks that the two and all is convinced that Harriet is in good hands. Mrs. Weston is worried by the fact that Frank is late coming from Richmond. At the house, Emma encounters an agitated Jane who asks her to tell everyone else that she has walked home. Frank then turns up out of humor and in the course of conversation says that he would like to go abroad. Emma teases him out of his mood and he promises to join the Box Hill trip. Critically looking at this chapter, what we notice is that Mr. Knightley says that only the future Mrs. Knightley may invite whomsoever she chooses to his estate. For the first time, actually, what we notice through this comment of Mr. Knightley that he's interested in marriage. Otherwise, throughout, we had an automatic assumption as readers that he has decided to remain a bachelor. We must appreciate Jane Austen's art as a writer. She is now paving way for the future, for the upcoming happenings, so that the reader can be prepared to see what is going to happen in terms of the relationship of Mr. Knightley and Emma. Clues are dropped that there may be Jane Fairfax suffering the indignation of becoming a governess, and even worse, she may owe her position to Mrs. Elton's interference. We as readers also develop suspicions about Frank Churchill and Jane Fairfax that they are involved, considering the strange circumstances of his late arrival and her early departure. Both are unhappy during their separate visits to the picnic at Donwell Abbey. Also, Harriet spending time with Mr. Knightley is a notable change in events. This is a reminder of Harriet's earlier claim that she was in love with a man of great status. Harriet has shown no interest in Frank Churchill, so it must be assumed that Emma was mistaken and Harriet has developed feelings for Mr. Knightley. So again, there are misunderstandings. The theme of misunderstandings is still there. Confusion and chaos about understanding the relationships is still there. Anyhow, this brings us to chapter 43. The next day the party goes to Box Hill for a picnic. पहली बात जो नोटिस करने की एक तो ये है कि हर 2 मिनट के बाद एक पिकनिक है, हर 2 मिनट के बाद एक पार्टी है. Because practically the people of this class, the elite class of Jane Austen's England of that times, have nothing else to do. So again, here is this party that is a picnic actually at Box Hill. We find Frank is still in a bad mood. The Box Hill trip is not a success. Why it is not a success? People are divided into groups and intergroup tension is quite visible. Mr. and Mrs. Elton keep to themselves. On the other hand, Mr. Knightley, Miss Bates and Jane form a second exclusive party. However, during the party, Emma stays with Harriet and Frank. Emma is disappointed by the dullness and lack of mutual interest by Harriet and Frank. अब उसने तो imagine किया हुआ ना कि Frank Churchill और Harriet का आपस में she would make a match. So if they are not paying attention to each other, she's worried. But later Frank becomes extremely lively towards Emma. She is confident that there is nothing behind his flirtations, but she is aware that others may get wrong clues from all this. The party sits about listlessly and Frank says that Emma demands to know what they are thinking of. Mrs. Elton is offended by Frank's deference to Emma and Mr. Knightley asks dryly if she would really like to know what he is thinking. So in this situation, in this background, Frank, in his effort to amuse Emma, proposes a little game. And what the game is? Everyone must say one thing very clever to Emma, or else two things moderately clever, or three things that are dull. Again, Miss Bates begins to chatter on incessantly. She comments that she will have no trouble meeting the last requirement, that is saying three dull things. Emma becomes very critical and harsh and very rudely says in response, "Ah, ma'am, but there may be a difficulty. Pardon me, but you will be limited as to number only 3 at once." ये कहती है कि हाँ लेकिन तुम्हारा मसला ये कि सिर्फ 3 ही कहनी है, उससे ज़्यादा नहीं. So she is taunting her. As Emma puts her down harshly, the mood of the party is further disturbed. Now a discussion on marriage begins, however. Frank comments that sometimes matches made in public places become regrettable on further acquaintance. He further comments that Mr. and Mrs. Elton are lucky that they are compatible. Finally, we find that the Eltons leave in disgust for a walk. At this point, Jane Fairfax leaves for a walk with her aunt and Mr. Knightley. Emma goes with Frank for a walk but soon gets sick and tired of his flattery. अब हर कोई अलग-अलग groups में जा रहा है. Later, Mr. Knightley takes Emma aside and criticizes her for her harsh behavior towards Miss Bates. He tries to remind Emma that Miss Bates has had an unfortunate life and deserves compassion. Emma has never felt so agitated, so mortified, so grieved in her life. She cries almost all the way home. Emma ने जितनी rudely behave किया था with Miss Bates, it is again Mr. Knightley who points her flaw out and criticizes her for that. So now she is weeping and crying as she goes back home. Talking about important critical discussion points, I would say that Emma's conduct and Knightley's comment on that are important. Although Miss Bates previously acted only as comic relief in the novel, she serves a greater purpose in this chapter. Well, she is absurd, chattering or silly, but she deserves to be treated with kindness for what she has suffered. Mr. Knightley is a voice of conscience when he reminds Emma that she made a great mistake when she put down Miss Bates. As one of the highest members of Highbury society, Emma has a duty to treat those of lower rank with kindness and to take pity on those such as Miss Bates. We also notice that this is the first time that Emma is impolite towards somebody. And as readers, we wonder, what about her manners and propriety? This leads us to chapter 44, and in this chapter what we see is the more Emma thinks, the more she finds that the Box Hill party was a disaster. She feels horrible about her treatment of Miss Bates. She decides to visit the Bates family next morning to make up for what she has done. As she goes there to apologize for her behavior at Box Hill, she comes to know that Miss Bates is not home. So Emma waits for her with Mrs. Bates. Miss Bates comes back. She treats her with great humility and kindness. This further makes Emma conscious of her bad behavior towards her. During Emma's visit, Jane remains in the bedroom with a headache, and it is Miss Bates who tells Emma that Jane was crying and writing letters to Colonel Campbell and Mrs. Dixon. She will be going to be the governess for Mrs. Smallridge of Maple Grove. This governess position is recommended by Mrs. Elton. Jane will be paid well according to Miss Bates, but in the heart of her heart, she here means Emma. Emma is ashamed of her own comments about Jane's relationship with Mr. Dixon. Again, we notice some development, a positive development in the character of Emma. She is ashamed of her comments that she has given about Jane Fairfax. She also is surprised, and she expresses her surprise and genuine concern for the unhappiness of Jane Fairfax's departure that must cause everyone. Jane will leave within 2 weeks, this is what we are told, and Emma is surprised to learn that Frank Churchill has departed the previous evening for Richmond. Two important critical aspects of discussion raised from this chapter. One is the development of the character of Emma, as I said earlier. The other is connection between Frank and Jane Fairfax. Well, as far as the development of Emma's character is concerned, Emma is appropriately ashamed of her behavior towards Miss Bates. She wants to remedy it. These feelings are sincere and commendable. She is slowly but gradually improving and learning. That is the ultimate theme of the novel. Then the author switches to the news of Jane Fairfax, and we come to the theme of social class, status and profession. It is again confirmed that Jane must enter a profession as a governess, a job that she earlier compared to the slave trade. We need to compare it with the status of other female characters in the novel. The female characters who belong to the elite class, they are not supposed to do any job. It is only the lower class people who are supposed to have some profession. And when it comes to lower class women, they have to work most of the times as governesses. Another important aspect is the connection between Frank and Jane Fairfax. There is now some explanation for Frank Churchill's recent bad mood. Mrs. Churchill yet again demands that Frank Churchill returns home. There is more evidence that the fates of Jane Fairfax and Frank Churchill are connected. Both suffer depression almost simultaneously, and both are set to leave Highbury around the same time. This brings us to chapter 45. When Emma returns home, she finds that Mr. Knightley and Harriet have arrived. Knightley is about to depart for London to visit John and Isabella. He is in a hurry, which surprises Emma. Mr. Woodhouse inquires about Emma's visit with the Bates family. On this, Emma blushes as she is conscious of all the episode, and she also remembers Knightley's comments on that. However, she believes that he understands her feelings and forgives her. Mr. Knightley seems to be happy with her visit. The next day, unexpected news arrives as Mrs. Churchill has died. Emma now realizes that there is no obstacle between Frank Churchill and Harriet. Meanwhile, she tries to help Jane Fairfax. She invites her to Harfield. As Jane is unwell, she sends her healthful foods and attempts to cheer her up. Again, what we notice is the good nature of Emma. Critically looking at the chapter, we can see the development of the character of Emma. She tries her best to set right her previous wrongs and ills, especially towards Jane Fairfax. Emma's modesty, her concern, and her efforts to make up for what she did to Miss Bates and Jane Fairfax, all this shows her positive change. She strenuously attempts to visit her and wish her better health. Not only does she think well of Jane Fairfax, but also she wishes to do something about it. Emma acts with a newfound modesty. She is even embarrassed when her devoted but delusional father compliments her for kindness towards Miss Bates, because she knows that Mr. Knightley knows the background of all this. Mr. Knightley's romantic attentions towards Emma become more overt in this chapter. With this, we come to the end of the session. These are the materials references that are used, and here I come to the review of today's session quickly. We started volume 3 of the novel today. So we started from chapter 37 and have covered till chapter 45. In doing so, we looked at the chapters, the important happenings that were taking place and the events that were presented. We had critical points of discussion with reference to important parts of the text and the development of characters. Jane Austen as a writer and her art of characterization was explored, and we saw how different themes were incorporated in these chapters. We also looked at the writing style of Jane Austen. With this, we come to the end of today's session. Thank you very much.